In fact, when Tesla died in New York City on the night of January the 7th, 1943, it was generally assumed that his earthly work was finished. The forces of darkness rejoiced at news of his death, which they considered most opportune. The world was at war, and under pressure of this need, the patents of Tesla were considered as royal plunder. The government agents moved in swiftly and seized all papers which Tesla had left in his safe, never suspecting that the incomparable genius had left them there merely to satisfy the idle curiosity of nosy people. Later, after due inspection and after World War II, most of the papers were considered of such little value that they were turned over to the Tesla Institute at Belgrade, despite the fact that Tito was in power in that country. The Yugoslav Institute recently published in English a very impressive volume which they indicate is definitive and which lists about 87 Tesla patents, together with reprints of some of his lectures and a brief story of his life. However, author Matthews is acquainted with at least 1,200 inventions, very important inventions, perfected by Tesla. He is only amused when he inspects recently published volumes, such as the Yugoslav book and another new American book, purporting to set forth the true facts about Tesla. These researchers have scraped the bottom of the barrel, trying to turn up Tesla's inventions, but they all seem to stop when they reach number 85, falling 1,115 short of the correct total. Many top-flight scientists seek out author Matthews these days in a belated attempt to pump him for information about Tesla's discoveries. But author Matthews wisely keeps his own counsel. He also keeps the confidence and trust which Tesla bestowed upon him. However, the scientists do not go away empty-handed, even if they do depart with an empty. Mr. Matthews gives to each and every one a sound piece of advice which he himself has tested over the years, and which he has found to be the ultimate goal for all seekers. Every time we wish to do something, he says, we should go to God first for wisdom, because He is the author of all science. Tesla was able to accomplish so much and see into the future because he understood God. From my own personal contacts with the space people, I find that their advancement is due to their faith and their obedience to divine law. We might pause here and remember that the laggards lagged only because they had lost their faith in God and refused to serve the light. The scientists who visit Matthews usually arrive heavily burdened with many university degrees and much learning, but, as they confess, they somehow missed Tesla, and now they would like to know something about him. Tucked under their arm is the new communist-issued volume on Tesla, which they had just purchased in order to bone up on the subject of the great scientist who did his major work in the United States. But something is either wrong with them or wrong with the book, because the two cannot get together. So they trek all the way to Quebec, and far beyond Quebec, out into the deep countryside of lakes and forest, in order to seek out Matthews in the hope of getting some light on the subject of Tesla's theories, which they admit they cannot grasp. Mr. Matthews receives them in his serene and cordial way, and then he tells them, as kindly as he can, if you would understand Tesla, you must first attune your mind to God. Since the unfortunate scientists usually know less about God than they know about Tesla, the result is confusion worse confounded. Since publication of The Return of the Dove was first announced over a year ago, the forces of darkness, especially in the United States, have become very active in their efforts to suppress the truth about Tesla. Matthews and Carr have been ridiculed repeatedly, and often by the very scientists and government officials who sought their advice. The present author has received hundreds upon hundreds of letters praising her efforts, but she has received a few telling her she is just plain crazy. The writers do not explain why they think so, but they just think so. Oddly enough, these critical letters, so naive they might have been written by a somewhat retarded schoolboy, come only from men who call themselves experts and authorities. They are experts, to be sure, but it must be clearly understood that they are experts in working for the dark forces only. They are authorities on the subject of evil. They are the chosen tools of the black magicians who roam the astral plane freely, and even the physical plane, until just before the opening days of World War II, when they met their comeuppance from the forces of light. It was at that time that the great prince of the archangels, Lord Michael, in one mighty Herculean effort, led the forces of light against the forces of evil, and put the last of the black magicians on this planet out of business permanently and forever. There has not been such a house cleaning on this earth since the laggards came. After he finished that mopping up operation, Michael cleaned out a horrible astral center which had hovered over Africa since Lemurian days, releasing thousands and thousands of earthbound entities who had been trapped there for countless centuries. This astral cloud had so lowered the vibrations in Africa that the country became historically known as a land of darkness, the Dark Continent. Michael's angelic legions were lined up tier upon tier so that they formed a dome over the astral cloud, and as the trapped souls were cut free, they floated upward, each one ballooning right into the arms of a waiting angel. They were carried swiftly away to temples of the violet fire, and today these millions of disembodied ones are being healed, purified, and trained so that they can be restored to civilization at some future date. The entire astral cloud of continuation, so dreadful it is impossible to imagine, was then dissolved by legions of angels firing it through and through with lightning-like bolts of ray energy. The released matter, so long and so cruelly imprisoned, was carried back to the sun for repolarization. But that was not all, for Michael then tackled his third great house-cleaning job in the astral region over Siberia, where for countless centuries a compound had been maintained for disembodied souls who had refused to serve the light. In the astral cloud over Africa, the earthbound souls were all persons who had failed to develop much intelligence when in embodiment. They were so retarded in evolution and so attached to matter, they simply had no desire to learn or to handle new experiences. They did not refuse to serve the light because they were not able to even generate enough energy to make a decision one way or the other. They had free will, and they could have freed themselves from bondage, received training, and then returned into incarnation, but they simply did not wish to be bothered. But the tens of thousands of disembodied individuals who were held in the compound were of an entirely different caliber. While in physical incarnation they had sat in high places, they had educational advantages and trained intellects. They had swayed large masses of people by their opinions and activities. They had positions as military leaders, theologians, fortune makers, doctors, scientists, and teachers. But they were confirmed skeptics, ambitious, cunning, proud, and extremely expedient. They never missed an advantage, regardless of resultant harm to others. They were basically criminal, but outwardly respectable. They were all tools of black magicians, devoting their lives on earth to serving the forces of darkness. They knew about the forces of light, but ridiculed all those who tried to serve the light in a simple and practical manner, free from orthodox trappings. Over the centuries, as these individuals shed their physical bodies, their vibrations magnetically drew them into the compound. In order to spare the population needless suffering, these tyrants were not permitted to reincarnate, neither were they permitted to mingle with other disembodied persons on the astral plane. If they decided through the exercise of their own free will to serve the light, they knew they would be immediately freed from the compound and could resume a normal existence. But so great was their rebellion that they remained bottled up and isolated as the years passed, their monotony broken only by the endless quarreling among themselves and the arrival of newcomers. Finally, a sufficient number of disciples on earth became conscious of conditions in the compound, so that by combining their invocative strength they could do something about lifting some of the karma.